Hello, welcome to Uncle Cthulhu Reviews. Today I'm going to do a video which is a bit of an introduction and my thoughts on 10mm wargaming. What's prompted me to do this is I've recently picked up a project which I've gone back to a couple of times over the years, which is my 10mm American Civil War. I've also done a bit of other stuff in 10mm. I did a 10mm Game of Thrones project a while ago. I did a Lannister and a Stark army. I've also got 10mm American War of Independence as well. So what is 10mm? What am I talking about? 10mm is the size of the models. So in wargaming, you tend to have 2mm. So the average size of a man is 2mm. You don't tend to see sort of many individuals there. It tends to be blocks of troops. Then you get into 6mm, and that's one of my favourite scales for big mass battles. I've done Waterloo in 6mm. I'm working on some Ancients in 6mm as well. Then 10mm, to give you an idea of what 10mm is. There you go. That's 10mm. That's my thumb. Okay. And then it goes upwards 15mm. 15mm. Again, you're still kind of using bases of troops, like your 10mm. 15mm has really got a big following with World War II. I mean, you do every scale in it. Certainly, I've got 15mm AK-47, which is kind of my modern African wars. But 15mm is really popular with World War II with Battlefront. I've got 15mm Great War. Battlefront, I've done some videos on that as well. Then it goes on 20mm. So 20mm basically equates to 1/72 from the modelling scale. So that tends to be sort of airfix model size. And a lot of World War II stuff is done in that scale because you've got the airfix kits and stuff as well to use. Then you get into 28mm, which I've done my black powder for, sort of bigger models. And then probably sort of Games Workshop's fantasy would be looking at more like 32mm these days. So yeah, 10mm. So there's a couple of key advantages for 10mm. It's smaller and it's cheaper. So we'll talk about cost first. It's cheaper. So £6 gets you approximately 30 figures. Comparing that to its nearest sort of size competitor is will be 15mm, and £6 basically gives you 16 figures. And they're a good comparison because you're going to be modelling them on bases generally. So my AK-47, for example, two models go on I think it's a penny I mount them on. It's whereas as you can see here, I've got four models on a 20x20 square base. So that's why I think they're a really good comparison. So if you are on a budget, £40 is going to get you approximately double in 10mm what you would get in 15mm. And actually, I don't really have the setup to show you some close-ups side by side with detail. What I have found is the best 10mm models in terms of detail and capturing that detail are easily better than some of the more average 15mm sculpts I've got. And certainly just because it's 10mm doesn't mean there is a significant lack of detail, certainly with the companies that I use and collect from. So what I've basically got is my Confederates are from Pendraken, which have got vast ranges from the Falkland Wars to ancient Rome, and pretty much it covers everything in between. Well, I think the Pendraken actually picked up them at our Wargame show. Done a wee bit of repainting them and rebasing them. And certainly they're on a part of the unpainted Pendraken stuff I ordered to bulk out the project. And my Union Army is from Callistra. Now Callistra, rather than being 10mm, actually, I think, advertise and push themselves to 12. So certainly you can see there is a bit of a difference between the Confederates and the Callistra boys, who are big. Certainly I'm not going to mix and match in the same army, but facing off against each other, they'll be fine. Well, I'll be happy and satisfied with it. And that's one of the things you'll you'll find in wargaming, whilst that you say 6mm, 10mm, 15mm, etc., there will be size differences between manufacturers. Sometimes it won't be noticeable. Sometimes they'll be slight, and actually in real life, some guys will be bigger than others, and sometimes the differences are so much that you cannot mix them in with the same unit. Maybe it's not even the same army without looking a bit odd. So 6mm suffers from that a lot. I'll do another video on 6mm one day. So yeah, so costs. Yeah, costs are down. Keep your costs down. But for many of us wargamers, budget isn't that big a concern. So the other advantage I talked about was they're smaller. So that translates to the ability to play sort of bigger level games in a smaller space. So certainly I can do a 6x4 foot table. My dining table, the average dining table is 5.5 foot by 3.5 foot. And I find on 10mm, mounted these guys, about 6 of these will be a unit. 6 bases that is will be a unit. I can easily start recreating brigades, divisions, and corps on the tabletop, and sort of play that bigger level game that I want to. And again, the 10mm models, because they're all mounted on bases, means that across a different set of rules, as long as they're all based on bases, which invariably they are, I can actually have 2 or 3 sets of rules when I'm building my army in mind, and depending on the style or level of game I want to play, I can dig out those rules and use them. So whilst I've just said they're good for playing army core level games, well, they'd also be good for sort of looking at a set of rules which look at the game in more detail. So if I use 10 of those bases, for example, well, the average regiment was 10 companies of approximately 60 men. Well, it should be 100 men, but as the war went on, with losses, etc., 60 men, 40 men, 30 men, but 10 bases would form a regiment, and you could have a set of rules based on detailed company level interactions and how they matter in the regiment and stuff. And certainly you'd have the size and scope to be able to do that across several other regiments. So imagine trying to recreate 5 regiments in 28mm. So your units would be 40 men strong. You know, even 5 of those, you're looking at painting 200 miniatures, whereas 200 miniatures in this, what's that? You could crack through quite easily. Now, one of the things about 10mm painting, wargaming, is a painting people are increasingly put off by smaller detail work. So here's my top tips for painting. So I've got my Union guys there, and as you can see, I've mounted them on a strip. I'll paint everything up to 15mm like this, and actually 28mm. The plastics I've kept on the frames, and I'll paint like this as well. Generally do characters on the run. So you see there, what I'll do is go along, and I'll on one side I'll paint the same thing. So I've sprayed these blue, and then I've gone and painted the trousers. I'll have painted the wood, and I'll just work through each one. You see on the back, follow the same methodology, backpacks, and once you get into the routine, there's some cavalry, mounted command, which I've been working on. But the same principles, just working through 1, 2, 3, 4, bum, 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 and I might make 5 or 6 of these strips up at a time and go and do different things, so I'm not just stuck on the same strip painting. So it can sometimes be a bit more interesting for me as well. And yeah, you can start rattling through the miniatures at a regular pace. The other thing which is really 10mm is really good for in terms of size of scale is storage. So if I put my really useful storage box, so I buy these at Ryman's, generally get 3 of them for a tenner. And what I've found is the whole project will fit in it. So if I pull out the top here, so once this project's finished, I'll have one box for my Confederates, one box for my Union, one box for my terrain. So that's the other thing. Your terrain isn't going to be massive either. I've got some beautiful 28mm terrain, but it does take up a lot of storage space for us. And when you've got a load of different periods like me, that starts to add up. Luckily, I've done the attic so I can put stuff up in the attic. So there you go. So I've actually bought the extension tray for the box. So my army sits in the extension tray in the box there. And I've got my work in progress bits in the bottom. So storage, like I say, the project, once it's done, is 3 of these boxes, which will stack together quite nice and neat. So yeah, so there's a lot going on for 10mm wargaming. If you want to know more, there's loads of resources out there. 4 key companies in my mind: Pendraken and Callistra. Then you've also got ones I haven't worked with as Magister Militarum, I think they're called, and Old Glory do a range of 10mm American Civil War and Napoleonics as well. So I'm going to do a couple of videos on my 10mm projects as they go on, and a bit of a show and tell about what I've got so far. And I've also got a video for the American, just talking generally about the American Civil War and the history behind it as well. So let us know what you think about 10mm wargaming. I'd love to have a discussion about it. And yeah, you have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. And look forward to having a chat with you about what you think about 10mm. Bye for now.